Honourable Minister, Chancellor Nkuklu, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, good afternoon and welcome to the launch of Future Africa. I'm Stephanie Burton. I'm the Vice Principal responsible for research and postgraduate education at the University of Pretoria and the UP executive who's responsible for making sure that today we present Future Africa to the world. So, this is Future Africa. It's a community, it's a research hub, it's a home for scholars, and it's a meeting place. It provides the physical and intellectual environment for science leaders who share a sense of social responsibility in Africa, in the world, and it's all about bringing about transformative change. Future Africa aims to become a premier Pan-African science platform for research and for science leadership for innovation, taking science forward to create a more sustainable and equitable world. This is an Africa-focused initiative, promoting research by establishing multinational academic leadership networks, conducting impactful, future-focused research that is relevant to Africa and also to the rest of the world. Future Africa represents the potential of African scientists to create impact for a better African future and to achieve research excellence and innovation for the benefit of our society. Through its visible presence, Future Africa provides an invitation to all sectors of our university community and to our broader community to partner with us in contributing to unlocking the potential of Africa. We do this on the premise that Africans can and should be leading the transformations needed by our continent and by the world. The Future Africa community begins with the University of Pretoria academic community, who are the foundation underpinning the academic and research programs at the heart of Future Africa. Future Africa will connect to a wide range of external stakeholders through the building of robust alliance with industry, government, and research and innovation agencies. We will become a key element of policy-making structures and a key influence on research to inform social and economic development. Future Africa will place a very special focus on the involvement and development of the next generation of scholars who will lead Future Africa's initiatives and programs to create the more sustainable version of the world that we seek. Our core approaches in developing leadership and achieving excellence are collegiality, inter- and transdisciplinary collaboration, and social responsibility. We see ourselves as a platform for science as a public good. We respect the legally protected and intrinsic rights to knowledge, while recognizing that research and its outcomes must be actively shared as widely as possible to make a meaningful contribution to the good of humanity and the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear this afternoon from our speakers the story of Future Africa. You will hear how we reached this point and the enormous amount of deep thought and work that has gone into the build-up to this launch today. You will realize that reaching this point is momentous for the Future Africa team and for the University of Pretoria. But although some of us may not feel quite like it right now, there is tomorrow and the future, and our research is the way forward. Future Africa's research programs will be based in areas which underpin our ethos and values, sustainability and equity. So, here are the research themes and our vision for research for the Future Africa and what will take us forward into tomorrow and the future. Connected Africa. We see connection for Africa as much more than broadband connectivity and communications. We see the deep history and knowledge of our peoples and as a basis for how we can use technology to change lives in innovative and uniquely African ways. From African soil, we see productivity from African soils, including biodiversity and agricultural production and food security, but wider than that, as a critical part of building a path to a fair and sustainable future. Health, people and place refers to health in a much broader sense than clinical medicine simply to cure human diseases. It encompasses people in communities everywhere and the environment in which they live, and it recognizes recognition of the right. It requires recognition of the right to health and well-being. Future education. Our African people need to be enabled to take the opportunities offered by the digital era and artificial intelligence through 21st century approaches to the way we educate. And the fifth one is equity in a global Africa. We envisage creating knowledge to inform policy in a way that will allow Africa to stand as a global competitor, leading the way to a just and equitable world. Ladies and gentlemen, starting with these themes, Future Africa will transform the world through African research excellence. Thank you. So following from that brief introduction of what Future Africa is at the moment, it gives me great pleasure now to ask our Vice-Chancellor and Principal, Professor Tawana Kupe, to come forward to welcome you formally and present his vision for Future Africa. Professor Kupe, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Betten. The Minister of Science and Technology, Ms. Mamaloko Kubai Ngubane, Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, Professor Lumkile Wiseman Kuhlu, Chairperson of the Council of the University of Pretoria, Ms. Futhi Mtoba, members of the Council of the University of Pretoria, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners here present, members of the Diplomatic Corps, executives of universities in South Africa, our continent, Africa, and from across the globe. The Director General of Science and Technology in the Ministry of Science and Technology, Deans and Directors at the University of Pretoria, senior academics and researchers in South Africa, our continent, Africa, and from across the globe, research administrators in South Africa, our continent of Africa, and from across the globe, representatives of regional, multilateral, and international organizations, partners and collaborators, early career and emerging researchers, all protocol observed. It is my pleasure, as the Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the University of Pretoria, to welcome each of you to the University of Pretoria. Future Africa and Africa Reimagined. Thank you for joining us today for a momentous event that heralds well for Africa's futures. Today, we are making history. We can confidently say, yes, we can transform Africa's futures for the better. Today, there is hope you can believe in, that an African knowledge institution is rising that will contribute to making a decisive difference to Africa achieving sustained, sustainable, and inclusive development. As you look around at the surroundings, facilities, and people around you, what you are also looking at is the future of Africa. Future Africa took shape when UP staff members from different disciplines discussed the needs of researchers, the importance of transdisciplinary research, and the imperative need to uplift Africa through research and development. A tiny seed which was planted has grown into the roots and branches stemming from the University of Pretoria to what we see here today. The launch of Future Africa is both a testimony of the University of Pretoria's responsiveness to the need to create institutions that seek to address Africa's challenges by turning them into opportunities to do something substantive, long-term, and sustainable. It is also testimony to its ability to use whatever resources it may have to put a stake in the ground, which is these facilities, and then leverage resources from partners, donors, and collaborators to collectively generate and disseminate high-level knowledge for multiple purposes. This new campus is more than just a picturesque setting, state-of-the-art buildings, and sustainable edible and forageable gardens. By that I mean you can eat the vegetables that you saw in the garden. The physical surroundings represent a dream. As a country and the continent as a whole, we'll see the fruits of this labor in the future, but not in the too distant future. What do I mean by this? Future Africa is the first of its kind. It is a collaborative space designed for transdisciplinary research. It is a space for thinking, researching, learning, a collaborating platform, connecting in transdisciplinary ways. In other ways, it is a space for creating new knowledge in new ways to address current and emerging complex, often seemingly intractable challenges that face primarily our continent, but also resonate globally. This means that we find solutions to problems from a holistic viewpoint, because problems rarely occur in a vacuum. At Future Africa, we aim to transform the world through African research excellence. In the near future, Africa will produce the highest quality peer-reviewed research possible, nurture and train the next generation of researchers who can collaborate, network, communicate knowledge to specialist audiences and general audiences, as well as influence policy and decision-making and generate resources for research. In this institute, ladies and gentlemen, we aim that we change the paradigm where policy making on our continent has often not been based on evidence and facts as it should be, particularly scientific and research-oriented evidence. Future Africa is becoming and will become an agent of change that will revolutionize knowledge creation in and by Africans and their global collaborators to transform lives, sectors, industries, societies, and nations, and make a contribution to the global archive of life-affirming knowledge. Future Africa is located in what at present is called the experimental farm. In my apology, you might have seen or even been blocked by some of our cows on our way here. No offense meant, they were just checking you out. Quite near to Future Africa is the Technology Innovation Agency, the CSIR, the National Research Foundation, and innovation agencies of other organizations. Future Africa at the University of Pretoria is part of a fast-emerging, most innovative square mile in Africa, comparable internationally to other innovative spaces, squares, and values. I don't mean Silicon Valley. But essentially, ladies and gentlemen, most of you have heard that here in South Africa, we have the richest square mile in Africa, which is Senton. What we lacked until now is the most innovative square mile in Africa. Today, we launch it. Africa has seen centuries. Africa has seen centuries of colonialism reap its negative effects all over the continent. And together with this, Africa has been built on extractive economies in which its raw materials and wealth are extracted in order to produce goods that are then imported back into the continent. This has brought with it numerous problems such as poverty, war and social upheaval, ecological disasters, environmental and health hazards, and famine, to mention but a few. At Future Africa, we aim to transform lives through education, research, development, and using science to solve problems, improve conditions, and have a positive impact on society. We need to remember that research and the broader scientific endeavor are not about absolute truth that is beyond question. Scientific and research findings, in general, across the knowledge spectrum, be it from the arts to zoonotics, are therefore just the very beginning and not the end for the quest for truth. Empirical data used in science can be verified and forms a sound basis for robust discussion, debate, and decision-making. Research, trends, and findings form the basis of the narrative of our collective understanding of phenomena. But the human impact of empirical data and natural phenomena cannot be ignored. We live in a society where everything is in a constant flux, and technological advances are rapidly changing our lives on a daily basis. Societies are becoming increasingly digitized, industrialized. Robotics and artificial intelligence, social networking, crowdsourcing, and the Internet of Things are all hallmarks of the fourth industrial revolution, which is unfolding around us. But how do all of these advances impact on humanity, on society, or quintessentially human and universal values of care and forgiveness, for example, are the big questions that an institute of this kind will seek to answer. Transdisciplinary research is research which goes beyond the confines of disciplines to co-create new knowledge that seeks to address complex, multidimensional challenges. I want to emphasize this point about new knowledge and co-creation of knowledge. This is how we break away from old or traditional forms of knowledge creation. Transdisciplinary researchers are people who don't just think out of the box, but actually throw away the box and find new ways of understanding our current and emerging contextual realities. Genuine transdisciplinary research, while based on existing forms of knowledge, is not just an aggregation of what we already know. It seeks to uncircle received wisdom in every respect and challenges all the co-creators to unlearn and learn anew. It requires us to rethink and create new ways of doing research. Excellence in transdisciplinary research can transform, renew, and revive disciplinary and multidisciplinary research. It valorizes multiple modes of translating research into solutions for real-world challenges. It is not, as Chris Bing put it in his book, The Soul of a University, when excellence is not enough. It's not a research that is a solution looking for a problem to solve. It is rather research that confronts problems and seeks to create knowledge. Future Africa is ideally built around the idea that research generates solutions that directly impact society. So, we've created a space where these types of debates, engagement, and inquiries can happen by bringing people from a variety of backgrounds, cultures, worldviews, and disciplines together. Africa, as you know, is a young continent, with an average age of our continent being under the age of 20. Our continent also represents 20% of the world's population. The complex problems that we face as a continent are reflected nearly in every country to a certain degree. But that is where Africa's solutions must come. Continent is making great strides in leapfrogging technology. As an example, the University of Pretoria has been at the forefront of scientific inquiry, which has the potential to help millions of people, not only in South Africa and Africa, but around the world. For example, we recently did the world's first middle ear transplant using 3D printed ossicles or tiny ear bones to allow a patient to hear. Our library, Professor Chifularo made the discovery. Our library is equipped with a maker space, which is a 3D printer that students use to print out bones and anatomical models for their studies. We're the only university in South Africa that is a faculty of veterinary science, which has a strong focus on food security and wildlife conservation. Our efforts in conservation saw a team of UP scientists lead the world's first artificial insemination of a lioness that led to the birth of healthy calves. Our researchers in the Faculty of Humanities and the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment and Information Technology have worked together to create a mobile hearing screening app which can save thousands of people from going deaf. Our research into malaria not only looks at medical cures, but also art and drama educational awareness approaches to ensure that our research matters and has an impact. It is imperative that Africa's youth are empowered, educated, and enabled to find solutions facing the continent, because for such a young continent, the future is theirs. South Africa and Africa urgently need, in every sector, good leaders with foresight and wisdom. well-educated, well-skilled and rounded citizens, and strong institutions that can anchor sustainable democratic futures, inclusive economic development, and social progress. Today, we've made a commitment to give our young researchers from across the continent a platform in which to make a difference. Many industrialized countries of the North use their resources and invest heavily in research and development, in science and technology, in science and innovation. Some of the researchers who work in these countries are African scholars and researchers and specialists who do not find the opportunities they need in Africa, and in so doing, take much of Africa's intellectual capital with them. As we launch Future Africa today, we are also saying, stay at home in Africa and help us build and rebuild our societies and collaborate and partner globally, but rooted in our own locality. At the University of Pretoria, our call is a pan-African one. We're making research opportunities available at Future Africa across the continent because that is the only way to do it. The scale of the challenges we face in Africa require a collaborative and a partnership approach. No nation, no society, no institution can go it alone. There is the stereotype of the professor who is old and doddering. And to a large extent, this is based in fact, since it takes many years of expertise and dedicated scholarship to be regarded as an academic expert in a field. At the University of Pretoria and through Future Africa, we are changing that stereotype around, as well by fast-tracking excellent research through programs like the Africa Science Leadership Program, the Early Career Research Leadership Fellowship, and the University of Pretoria Young Researcher Leader Program, all of which are designed to build a diverse skill set, research capacity, and expertise to benefit society. According to the Department of Higher Education and Training's report on the evaluation of the 2016 university's research output, published in March 2018, the University of Pretoria is the largest producer of research outputs in the country. I know it is 2019, so I'm not hiding the 2019 figure. The audit is on as we speak, and I will update you at an appropriate time. We continue to make our mark by encouraging our students to excel at an undergraduate level and then pursue further specialization in postgraduate studies. We are proud to be home to a large cohort of postgraduate students, more than 70% of who are Black and majority of who are women. This is a significant achievement socially, economically, and historically in South Africa's research landscape. Our commitment to sustainability is an institutional one. We uphold the strongest values of ethical and responsible leadership and corporate governance. At the same time, we believe in being kind to the environment and using science to harness nature to minimize our impact. As you look around the garden, when we get out, you can look around the garden, you will find that the facilities have been built around the natural landscape. The gardens are beautified, and let me repeat, with edible fruit, vegetables, and herbs, which encapsulates all of the benefits of urban living with rural and agrarian charm. Let me also add that some of the plants you see outside in our garden have been actually gathered across the continent. It is true that research is a long and slow process, which can be lonely, time and labor intensive, but it is a rewarding one. The accommodation that we have on this campus ranges from single rooms to family spaces. The campus can accommodate roughly 300 people. The idea is that all are welcome at Future Africa, and one's personal life should not be a barrier to one's research ability. So we've created a collaborative space that embraces the nuances and conveniences, perhaps sometimes inconveniences, of a lifestyle that revolves around one's research work and passion. We call on governments, multilateral organizations, donors, trusts and foundations, business and wealthy individuals to pledge their support to Future Africa and to partner with us to ensure that we have the funding that we need to transform Africa's futures. Such support will provide the sustained and long-term impact that will benefit society. The University of Pretoria as do other universities on in our continent, has a proud history of excellence in knowledge creation, impactful and relevant research, high-quality academic programs, innovative teaching and learning, and social responsiveness and engagement needed to make a decisive difference to transforming Africa's futures. Working together with all our partners and stakeholders, we can achieve the scale and critical mass to be successful. What we'll do at the University of Pretoria is to work collaboratively through Future Africa to uplift societies on our continent and make a contribution to the world by using our knowledge, skills, and resources to make today and every day matter. Welcome to Future Africa, the future of Africa. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Professor Coupe, for saying all the things that needed to be said about where we are and where we're going. Ladies and gentlemen, you're now going to hear the Future Africa story, the Future Africa vision, from Professor Bernard Slippers, who is the founding director of Future Africa and who has certainly been, I think, the leading light in bringing us to where we are today. Professor Slippers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Burton. It really is a great honor for me to be doing this presentation on behalf of a whole community of people who, over the past 4 years, have been dreaming about this moment. So, I will tell the story along two lines. One is the growth of the idea of Future Africa, and the other, the growth of a person that illustrates some of what we want to achieve through Future Africa. And you'll see them illustrated by these different symbols that I go through, or that I use. I will start with the story of the person. So the person in the story is a young African engineer who leaves her job to go and pursue a PhD in education in the Netherlands, because that's her passion, is in education. And we're going to follow her story along the line as we go through time. At the same time, and now I'm talking about the idea that led to the establishment of Future Africa. Within the research community, there is an expression of aspirations to make a bigger impact to the big issues that face our world. And it's captured within this document called A Passion for Science and a Passion for a Better World, that was written by a group of young scientists that convened at the World Economic Forum, and Professor Howard Alper, who will speak later, was instrumental in getting that group of young scientists together. But as these young scientists from different countries around the world got together from different disciplines and reflected what is the thing that bound them together, that's what they came up with. They have a passion for science, they have a passion to make us a better world. And that led to action. It didn't stay just with words. So they reflected on how they might do this more actively. And in 2010, the Global Young Academy emerged from those aspirations of those young scientists. At that time, there were 3 or 4 young academies around the world, but that aspiration is so strong that since the establishment of the Global Young Academy, 33 new young academies have been established around the world, another 10 similar organizations, many of them stimulated by the work of the Global Young Academy. And they were grappling with things like the science system that isn't always, in our training system, that aren't always aligned to what we want to achieve, to that aspiration of making a bigger impact in the world. And it's captured, I think, in some of these texts that's been written about that. Perhaps this quote captures it best. Searching for solutions to today's global challenges requires that the scientific community operate in fundamentally new ways. Developing effective solutions requires converging approaches such as the integration of knowledge of the life, physical, social, and economic sciences and engineering. Research performing and training institutions such as universities and research institutes have critical roles to play, and it's essential that they develop appropriate training programs to stimulate this kind of research. But as we then reflect on our training systems, it often doesn't currently reflect that, and there's a desire to change it. If you look at the global knowledge generation landscape, it isn't a level playing field. So if you look at investment, perhaps, or the size of science systems reflected here, so the size of the circles here reflect the investment in research and development in the different countries and the percentage of GDP that's invested. And if you look for developing countries or African countries, you're going to find them at the bottom here, small and with very small investments in science. So really not a level playing field from that perspective. Or if you look at something like research networks, which is critical to the development of new knowledge and where there's a lot of power in knowledge generation today, then that's North America and Europe. You've got the Asian and Australian universities and their strong networks here. You've got some South American networks forming there. But if you look for the African institutions, you'll find them scattered around the edges of these networks. So not strong networks on the continent and really not at the center of leading those networks. So there's leading to an urgency to address these inequalities and the need for a different kind of training. So as all of that was happening, this found a home at this institution, at the University of Pretoria. It was resonating with what was happening at the university. University's 2025 vision statement that says we position ourselves as a research-intensive university that does research that matters, that make an impact in our society. With a drive for internationalization, as many universities are doing, but with a very strong focus on Africa as a cornerstone of that internationalization process. And the desire to build our inter- and transdisciplinary research systems in the university, together with very practical things like the growth in research at the university is driving a need for accommodation for research students and visiting scholars and so forth. So with that, the idea really was born at the end of 2013. And as I said, from a whole community of dreamers on the one hand, and other very practical people who could work out business models and plan how to do this. I want to jump to the other story of at this time, so in 2013, our young African researcher is finishing her PhD, and she's returning from where she came from to live out her passion in education. And she starts working at the Uganda Martyrs University, 100 kilometers or so from Kampala, a private university, but isolated. There are no mentors or few people that she works with. So really an environment that is not very conducive to doing very impactful research from the excellent training that she had and the passion that lives in her. She finds, by luck, she says, at that time, the Africa Science Leadership Program and becomes a part of the first cohort of the Africa Science Leadership Program. And she says that program helped her to refine her vision. She says, I now know what I want to do, but importantly, it also helps her find a network. I know who I want to do it with. Back at the university, at that time when that leadership program is happening, all the plans and the financial plans have been made, and we're starting to build. And I mentioned there are many organizations that need to be mentioned, from the builders and that have managed the programs, but the architects and Earthworld and Insight really have become partners in trying to give a vision or give physical structure to the vision that the dreamers here carried, and they dreamt with us. And I want to recognize also not only the companies that did that, but all the hands that built this place. Those 8 men that, if you go to the dining hall later and you look at the beautiful woodwork, that worked for a year on that work, or Lizzie that did the beadwork that's inside there. Bringing us to where we are today with a finished campus and our rector has already reflected on our gardens, and there are experiments running in our gardens. There are biodiversity experiments as part of this, as part of these gardens. And we're really creating a research ecosystem with everything that we have in this space. And if you give me a few minutes, I will show you a video that captures that development.
Cultures and resources. A continent ready for transformation-minded science leaders with a sense of social responsibility who wish to work towards a more equitable and sustainable future. We present Future Africa.
A platform where research excellence and the development of transdisciplinary research networks are at the heart of what we do. An inclusive design that provides a dynamic living, learning, and research environment.
The innovative architecture and the forage gardens of the campus plays an active role in shaping minds as much as it does in shaping a sustainable environment.
A truly productive landscape. The campus can accommodate several programs with ease, with facilities such as a dining hall and restaurant, conference center, numerous breakaway and workshop spaces, a research commons with desk, office and meeting spaces, and 280 living units.
Set in tranquil and safe surroundings, yet well connected to the city and the university amenities, Future Africa offers a healthy and productive research lifestyle destination. The Future Africa initiative hosts a new generation of research leaders. This platform serves as a hub for them to develop research networks across the continent and across the globe.
Our interactive workshops will bring together groups of researchers, government, funders, and other relevant societal representatives from across Africa and the globe to engage on selected challenges and opportunities that require transdisciplinary solutions.
Our dialogue fora and seminar series invite leaders in government and society, as well as leading local and visiting scholars, to participate in co-designing research programs for real-life solutions.
A community, a hub, a home for scholars, and a physical meeting place. An environment where a community of scholars and other societal role players can continuously engage with one another towards a better future for Africa.
We endeavour to take personal and collective responsibility to lead the change that is needed to make the world a more equitable and sustainable place through excellence in transdisciplinary research.
At Future Africa, we believe that together we can transform the world through African research excellence.
You have to endure me for a little bit longer, because we should not only reflect on where we are and what has been built, but also what we want to do. Perhaps before I get on to what we want to do, also to just mention, and the rector has already mentioned that, this most innovative square in the University of Pretoria. So the placement of Future Africa on the university's experimental farm, in this knowledge hub, in this diplomatic hub, in this governance hub, is really, really significant. And as we speak at the moment, the next development of the engineering out of the engineering faculty is happening on the other side of this environment. So in reflecting on where we want to go in terms of the research that we want to do, and this has already been mentioned, we really believe that where we want to position ourselves is transforming the world through African research excellence. So not only dealing with our own problems, but really making a contribution to the world through the research that we do. And how we think, or how we intend to do that, and how we are doing that, is by letting ourselves be guided by the following principles, by everything that we do being African-focused and being Africa-led, by focusing on interdisciplinarity and teamwork and building networks, on going beyond that and creating new knowledge through transdisciplinary research and building and so the social responsibility of our work. Focusing on excellence in everything that we do. There's no way that we're going to lead the world and transform the world if we don't focus on excellence in everything that we do. Respecting and harnessing from the diversity that we have not only in this country, but on this incredible continent. And by taking personal and collective responsibility for doing this. As a university community, we've been reflecting, and both Professor Coupe and Professor Burton has referred to the enormous research strength across a broad range of disciplines that the university has. And that we know has to anchor the work that we do, but we're reflecting on national and international development needs and how the strengths that we have align with those needs. And reflecting on that, and I don't expect that you read all of that, but that's really our sort of thinking process of looking how we align with those. We've ended on these 5 research areas that Professor Burton has already explained, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But just to mention the focus on connected Africa, from African soil, equity and a global Africa, future of education, and health people in place. And these are research areas where we believe that we have strength to start and engage with this, but also where we are stretched and where we don't have all the capacities that's needed to really make the impact. And we'll be looking at our partners across the continent and across the world to help us develop impactful research programs. And it's not only what we're going to do, but how we're going to do it. By focusing on very specifically in all the research programs that we do, on looking at the capacities, bringing together the capacities, the opportunities and the needs of bringing our communities, our funders, our research communities, our governments into the same space in how we co-create the research that we're going to do, be very intentional in how we train the people for these needs that are identified through that reiterative process that we would run, and through that generate the impact that we're going to have or want to have in Africa. And it's not just that we want to do that. We are doing so already. We're using this space and the convening power of this space already. In the past week, we have had the privilege of having people from around the world and people from around the continent to engage in a Science Advice for Policy workshop funded by the IIP and Carnegie, in a transdisciplinary research leadership program reflecting on what that means in an African context, funded by the Bosch Foundation. We are raising funds and starting fellowships, such as, for example, this Early Career Research Leadership Fellowship that's focused on the bioeconomy and really cuts across all the different disciplines, but illustrating some of the work that the way that we're going about doing it, taking these young researchers and not only developing their research, but also developing them as leaders of future centers of excellence, and being really mindful about how we do that. Our Africa Science Leadership Program continues to grow and make an impact across the continent. We've just started with the 5th cohort of this incredible program that's transforming lives and transforming science systems across the continent. And through these programs, we are developing platforms such as this Connectors platform, a project that's emerged from the Africa Science Leadership Program that now visualizes and makes searchable research expertise and gives a platform for researchers across the continent so that people can find them and help and connect them to funding opportunities and so forth. We're looking at the models that are working. So, for example, the FABI institution, where I'm also involved, that has, and this is a reflection of their co-authorships, so creating global networks and networks across the continent to have real impact through the research that we do. So looking at these models, learning from them, and implementing them through the other programs that we're developing. And through building partnerships, and I've mentioned many partnerships already, and I can't mention all of them. But as an illustration, for example, from big corporates, next door you will see a policy innovation center that's been launched with Microsoft. Discussions with the Next Einstein Forum and AIMS, Pan-African Research and Training Initiative, and you'll hear from the CEO, Terry Zumahon, just now, to small startup companies. And I invite you to have a look at your notebook that you have, at the story that's written in the back, and try to see if you understand why we believe that this is a partnership that shares the passion that we share for a better world and a better continent. And that image comes from the wall of their startup here in the center of Pretoria that they drew with pen on the wall, capturing their passion for what they do. I want to end off by coming back to the story of the young researcher that I mentioned, that went off to the Netherlands, came back to Uganda Martyrs, engaged through the Africa Science Leadership Program, and is today, so it's Connie Chimarewe, she's going to be your next speaker. But today she is the co-chair of the Global Young Academy, a selected group of young researchers from across the world that has an impact on science development globally. And she herself is a growing voice globally for science, for change in the science landscape. So representing for us, or illustrating for us, what we mean by transforming the world through African research excellence, and the programs that we intend to run here. So we want to invite you, if you share with us this passion for science and a passion for a better world and a passion for Africa, we do not believe that we can do this alone. We are looking for the partners that share this passion with us and is going to go on this journey with us. We invite you to partner with us. Thank you, Professor Burton.
Don't go away. Professor Slippers, before you sit down, ladies and gentlemen, not only has he given you a wonderful talk, but he has spent the last few months in many, many meetings and discussions with me, and we have spent many hours up in the breakaway rooms down here around Future Africa, planning for all of what we've been doing today and what Bernard has presented today. But I think that 95% of the time when he came to those meetings, he didn't have a pen. Bernard, a token of your hard work.
Thank you very much. Very appropriate, thank you.
Look after that one. It's not just one of the UP pens. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Dr. Connie Neshimweri, and she is going to take the story up from where Bernard left off and give us her vision for research in Africa. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to address such a distinguished body of researchers and fellow Africans. My talk today is titled The Future of Research on the Continent, on the African continent. And you can imagine this is a really daunting task. All I can say is that I can present the voice of one person and hopefully begin a conversation. To start, for me, thinking about the future of research on the African continent, it's impossible for me not to think about the past and the present. And this is no better shown than the concept of Sankofa. Lydia, who's Ghanaian, will help me read this. Yes, Lydia. Which literally means it is not taboo to go back and fetch what you forgot. Sankofa is a mythical bird that flies forward while looking back and carrying an egg in its beak, which egg signifies the future. And it tells us that whatever is lost, whatever is forgotten, whatever is foregone, whatever has been stripped away can be reclaimed, revived, preserved, and perpetuated. I'm from the educational sciences, and so in preparing this talk, it was useful for me to think about our collective grasp of the past and the present through our education system. And my history education tells me that Europeans came from across the oceans and discovered Africa river by river and mountain by mountain. No wonder about 2 years ago, it was a complete surprise to me to find out of such a place as the Great Zimbabwe, 2 years ago. And at last I could connect to a physical history, a physical African history, and it was a really inspiring moment for me. And I was able to negate the words of the venerated British historian, Hugh Trevor Roper, who said, "Perhaps in the future, there will be some African history to teach. At present, there is none or very little. There's only the history of Europeans in Africa. The rest is darkness. And darkness is not a subject for history." Imagine my joy then also when I discovered the great Ethiopian philosopher Zera Yacob. I don't know if any of you know him, who was positing the highest ideals of enlightenment a century before Locke or Hume or Kant. And my delight when I found out that, in fact, the oldest university that has been continuously running in the entire world is located here in Africa, in Morocco, at a place called Fez. It was founded in 859 2.5 centuries before Oxford, and Cambridge was founded another century later. But what was even more exciting to me was to find out that this university was set up by 2 young Tunisian women. So when I'm told as a woman today to fight for my rights, I only need to reach back into my past and reclaim them. And it's very inspiring. Fortunately, those of you who did not know some of these things can easily look them up on Google. And recently, I put this search term into Google and asked Google, what's the oldest university in the world? In small print, it tells you it's some university in Morocco, but the oldest university in all of Europe is Bologna. It was necessary to put this in big font, but if you look more closely, you'll see that no, in fact, it's in Morocco. This is a true story. And this brings me to the present, because our stories are still being told for us, they're still being curated for us, we are still being studied. You know as well as I do that the leading journals of the world are awash with stories about Africa by non-Africans. We are told that Africa looks like this, whereas in reality, it looks more like this, diverse, with a rich culture, rich history, untold number of languages. One of my favorite philosophers is Paulo Freire, Brazilian, and he said that the vocation of every human is to become more fully human. And Future Africa, for me, represents an opportunity for Africa to become more fully who we are and evolve to become this. Again, because I'm an educator, I go back to the education system, and in my mind, the replacement of our traditional educational systems with formal systems interrupted this evolution to who we really are. In African traditional society, education was a means to an end, lifelong learning. We learned for a purpose, and we continued to learn when we needed to learn to adapt. In our current schooling system, education is an end in itself, and this is determined by our examination boards. No wonder the African ministries in 2005 said that with colonialism, education became equated with mere schooling. In traditional societies, education for all was taken for granted. In a colonial setting, schooling for all became a problem. And I agree. Because at the moment, about half of all out-of-school children in Africa will never set foot in a school. This is from a report by UNESCO in 2012. Half will never set foot in school. And only 6% make it to the university. Mind you, this does not mean not setting foot in school is to be uneducated. After all, everybody continues to run businesses, raise a family, and live to a ripe old age. On the contrary, this formal schooling system runs alongside a robust informal education system, which I think, sad as it may be, is an opportunity for us because it's a big resource of the indigenous knowledge that tells us how our forefathers and our foremothers lived in this environment of ours, and how they adapted, and how they evolved. We, the unschooled, unfortunately, do not know a lot about, rather, we, the schooled, do not know a lot about what goes on in this sphere. I know that in my schooling days, I could identify very accurately what a wheat plant looked like in my textbook on the Canadian prairies. But I could not tell you what the jackfruit tree in the back of my parents' garden was. I couldn't identify it. Coming to our discussion of the future of Africa, I'll frankly tell you that I don't know, because we must determine it all together. Future Africa has the right idea, for sure, the idea of transdisciplinary research. But as Freire says, our collaboration requires us to enter a deep dialogue. A dialogue, where are my notes? A deep dialogue across these parallel universes. A deep dialogue across the past and the present. A deep dialogue across disciplines, across the private sector and the public sector. But, or as we say here at Future Africa, and we in this room, the scientists and the schooled, will need a deep humility. We will need to recognize the humanity of everyone else. We will need to have complete faith in the ability of every human to think, even though they think in a different language. We need to be willing to openly consider the knowledge that they hold and that they bring. We need to be ready to persevere in patience, even when at first they are not willing to collaborate. In my opinion, it is only through this deep dialogue that we can obtain a fuller picture of our past and our present. And only then do we have any chance of arriving at a scholarship that can liberate us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie, for a fascinating presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is somebody that we are immensely proud to have with us, Mr. Thierry Zummerhorn, who is going to speak about building a competitive African science system. Thierry is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, known as AIMS, and also involved with and has been leading the Next Einstein initiative and the Next Einstein Forum. Thierry, we're really looking forward to it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You've got your own.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I want to thank Professor Barnard for the extraordinary work that you've done here with your team. I have known people across this continent who for 25 years have been telling me of projects, but I've never seen the project materialized. Believe me, it's not one, it's not two, it's not three, there are many. They talk all the time, they're still talking. When I was younger, they were talking. Now, I'm less younger, they're still talking. Honorable Minister, thank you. It's been a pleasure to see you again after Kigali at the Next Einstein Forum. Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, and Vice Chancellor, Professor Coupe, Stephanie, for the past 72 hours, I think we've talked a lot, and we have great things to do together. Professor Howard Alper, my own board of director, the chair of my Audit and Finance Committee. Yeah, it means something, huh? There will be an Audit and Finance Committee for Future Africa, I'm sure. So I'm very happy to be here, and I wholeheartedly welcome the theme of building a competitive African science system. I will talk much less about African science system, but African science movement, in which I embed the science. But 2/3 of my talk will be to refresh our memories about contextual backgrounds and history. You know, I have a huge respect for historians. You know, history tells it all. Connie has shown something. She went on Google And exactly, if we want to change the way things appear on Google, we must include African perspective in machine intelligence and artificial intelligence. Otherwise, it will remain like that for 200-300 years. So I'm here to attempt to answer 3 questions. Number 1, why are we here? Number 2, why is this grand opening of Future Africa so significant for the African continent? The pioneers of this vision talk about the Future Africa being a community, a hub, a home for scholars. I say that we all are at an epicenter of knowledge and innovation for the whole Africa. You don't believe it? Applaud the pioneers. So my first question is, why are we here? Second question is, why is this event so important and timely for Africa? And my third question, which resonates very well with my topic, what are we doing all together, or what should we be doing to position Africa as a global geopolitical hub for science and knowledge? So let me dive very quickly. Why are we here? I think those who talked before me have already mentioned that there's no continent or no region, geopolitical region, as diverse as this continent on Earth. It's extremely important. With this comes a set of complexities, challenges, but also great prospects. We are a continent where some of the grand challenges facing our humanity will find their solutions. Professor Bernard Slippers talked about it. Some of the grand challenges we're facing will not find solutions in North America, in Asia, in Europe. We'll find it here because of the massive diversity we have on this continent. And we're a continent that is viewed as a continent of many problems. Some experts in demography project that in a couple of generations or less, this continent will be home for 40% of the global youth. And I guess it's true, that by that time, this continent will grow into 2 billion people. I'm reminding us of this context for one reason. For us to understand what is at stake, why Africa has an ultimate chance, an opportunity to lead. And the last, maybe, I'm not a prophet of misfortune, but this is the last chance we have to show the world what we can do and what we can lead in. That's why I'm repeating this, because it can go either way. If properly channeled, this 40% of youth, which will come Africa home, will transform humanity like we've never seen before. But if it goes wrong, you can build walls around South Africa, you can build walls around France, the youth will go in there. No matter how high the walls are, they will go in there. It's not Africa that will be the only one in trouble. And then we will be the powerhouse of global workforce. Again, if properly channeled. You know, I'm a fan of jazz and classical music. And each time when people talk about Africa, there's nothing positive that comes up. It happens. When people want to praise you, they will say something positive, but they don't mean it. They don't mean it. You can read it in the non-verbal communication. What I look at, I don't just hear people's words, I look at the body language. And sometimes your body language never lies. And when you're lying, your body language says something different. So I was saying I'm a fan of classical music. We all know Beethoven. We all know Beethoven. I know his story. I visited in Bonn, his birthplace, and I was amazed to find that handicaps, problems, should not hold you back. Thinking about Beethoven, when I was visiting his birthplace in Bonn, I was thinking about Africa. This is a virtuoso, you know, the world's greatest name of all time in classical music. But in his late 20s, he became completely deaf. He couldn't hear. His hearing deteriorated. Many people, many of his contemporaries thought, he's done, he's finished. Beethoven won't accomplish anything. And yet, it's when he was completely deaf that Beethoven composed the greatest symphonies that we enjoy today. Africa may be deaf, but this is our age of generating the greatest symphonies that the world will enjoy for 1,000 years. So I will run through this context, which is, why is this event so important? Number one, we have many things that we already know. I will just refresh your memory. You know, we have only 25% of young Africans going into STEM studies. And no African government is investing more than 1% of their GDP in research and development. I know and I'm aware that the government of South Africa is planning to reach that target in a year or two. I hope they're making progress. Honorable Minister will certainly respond to us, but no pressure. So, and we account for less than 1% of the global research output. You can see that this is not great. Of the 25 people percent who goes into, of the 1%, sorry, which are invested in R&D, only 29% goes to STEM. So this is one element of context. Another one, which we all know, is that our continent has been spending for more than 30 years, $4 to $5 billion on outsourcing the STEM-related services. This is a tragedy. Or we go to international firms, but we have capacities that we cannot trust. Another element of context which makes this event so important is the number of women representation in STEM field. You can tell by yourself what is happening here. This is for men, this is for women. After the master's degree, it's extremely difficult for women to stay in the STEM field. And there are numerous factors. It drops. And it continues to drop as I speak to you. So I'm trying to answer my question as, why is this grand opening of Future Africa so important for the continent? Not just this one, but other initiatives, and why we should join forces together. The disparity is huge, and it reflects the small investment in STEM and R&D. Another element of context. You know, 7 to 8 out of 10 kids who started school today will work in industries that had never existed before. So how is the University of Pretoria training students to work there? How do we know? If we don't know the industries in which they're going to work, how do we know the skills they need to work there? And every year, 11 million young Africans enter the job market. This will grow as the continent turns to 2 billion, a 2 billion continent. Can you imagine what is happening here? I am optimistic by nature, positive, but I can't deny the reality. So if we can review this, now we know why we're here and why these initiatives like Future Africa is so important, because we need a new generations of skill sets for the 21st century world economy. So this gives you an example, because we want to compare ourselves to some other regions or countries. When it comes to investment in knowledge, technology, and skills, this is where Africa stands. There's a 96% gap between us and just China and the US. And we want to compete on the global stage. Our leaders, African leaders, are talking about transformation almost every day. This is it. We run a rapid survey at AIMS, at the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. We wanted to hear from young scientists themselves. What are the issues, the challenges, the problems you're facing? Why are you guys not striving? This is what they told us. It was a rigorous randomized survey that the problem they're facing, weak government support, non-alignment, public acceptance is difficult. Actually, some of the problems here is not the fault of government. Some of them are the fault of scientists not being able to communicate properly the outcome or the output of their research. But you see, brain drain is still there. Technical skills, research infrastructure, and you name it. I happened to read a book by Alec Ross. It's a former secretary in charge of, a former advisor in technology and science to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. This is what he said. I didn't put the quotes because I paraphrased him. I know I'm with scholars here. I don't want to take the risk to plagiarize. So he used leapfrog. I say quantum leap. So Africa will either quantum leap or be left behind permanently. And we've got the resources, the talent, the skills, the demography that any region would dream of to quantum leap in this age of revolutions. So why are we here? Now let's draw on history. 200 years back, the world was not what it is today. It was a very rudimentary, rural, basic. But then something happened. I'll run you through this. Something happened. First, technological revolution. We've experienced 5 technological revolutions. Some people are talking about 4th industrial revolutions. It's not quite the same thing. I know it's Professor Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum who is talking about this. I'm not talking exactly about the same thing. So, first industrial revolution, Britain invented the Industrial Revolution. Britain initiated the Industrial Revolution. That was the age of mechanized cotton industry and whatever. So, these are, with each technological revolution, there was a series of technologies that were produced and a series of new industries that emerged or existing industries that were redefined. I'm saying this on purpose because of where we stand, because of the corridor, innovation corridor that University of Pretoria, Future Africa, and other global and continental partners want to implement here. So, second technological revolution, steam and railways. We all know this. Actually, I'm talking about things that you already know, but I wanted to draw your attention to the next slide. So that's Britain again, and then Britain expand to the US. Something happened. From 3rd to 4th technological revolution, Britain slipped off the path. Britain was no longer the leader. The leader became the US and Germany. And the 5th technological revolution, US, Europe, and Asia. Now, in my own assessment, from my humble experience, I think we are right now in the 6th technological revolution, even though you could arguably say, Thierry, this digital revolution should be included in the age of information. I want to segregate them on purpose. And there's a 7th technological revolution, which is knocking on our door in the next 15 to 20 years, and that's the quantum revolution. This is where exactly, this is what Alec Rock is talking about. This is where Africa has the most competitive edge on every single region, despite the amount of finances, resources, energy that they have. But for us to get there, this is the place to be. This is the kind of initiative we should embark upon. This is why the Future Africa is relevant. So I'm not sure if 1 or 2 people have caught something in this slide. I'll just give you two. I've already said it, by the way. This is where Britain went out, and this is where Asia took its chance. When is Africa going to take its chance? Because these two will be around for 100 years, minimum. We don't know what is upcoming next. So, new technologies will emerge from this age of information. And we want to play our role in the way the world will solve problems using knowledge, science, and innovation. And these are the areas randomly selected, no orders, no academic rigor in this. I just throw them out there. Neurotechnologies, biotechnologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these big data will feed the existing business industries, redefine existing businesses, and create new industries. If you go back here, you see three main raw materials that engineer-powered those technological revolutions. One is land, the second is steel, and the third is data. So why are we here, and what are we here to accomplish? And what should we be doing to help this, to position Africa as a global player? First, I've already said it, the missing link was Future Africa. Now Future Africa is here, and it's here to thrive and to stay. So this is what we're trying to do. We think at AIMS that we must reinvent the university of the 21st century. I don't know how further the University of Pretoria or UCT can stretch to accommodate the hundreds or tens of millions of young students who are upcoming. We can't stretch this auditorium. If it takes 300, it only will be 300. We must reinvent the way the learning institutions on this continent. If we want to be up to the task, up to the challenges of the 21st century, the way we approach learning, the pedagogy of teaching, the technique of teaching, the way we conceive classical, backward academic traditions must change. Heavy engineering started during the third technological revolution. Today, the University of Pretoria must think about the School of Engineering in a totally novel way. You don't need necessarily to go through 5-6 years to become an engineer. This is the challenge. You may not agree with me, but this is going to happen. Other people are already trying it, and we have the potential to go. So we are implementing an ecosystem, very briefly, of centers of excellence that seek to provide young Africans with the highest skills they need to be effective, productive in industry, in academia, and research institutions. Second program of this is the industry linkages. Young scientists who don't want to go into academia and research, want to do something in the private sector, can be linked up with industry and deliver full productivity there. Quantum Leap Africa, we, in our strategy, and what we hope to be doing in the future with the Future Africa is to say that we can't wait to be ready before we start positioning Africa for quantum science and technology. So this is a key program to not to catch up, but to prepare ourselves for what is upcoming. That is the seventh technological revolution. We have research centers of excellence, 6 research centers of excellence across Africa, and we're trying to increase the pipeline of training into STEM fields by improving the way math and science are taught across universities. So this shows you a few statistics. We get our students from 43 countries across Africa. We have 1,800 alumni, and 30% of them are women. Our strategic goal is to get to a parity and continue to expand, as our plan is to expand to 15 countries. What we strongly, our learning approach here is the one of focusing on critical analysis, regardless of the field of training, problem solving, independent thinking, and research excellence. So we want to implement, solve Africa's problem through cutting-edge researches. We launched last year in Rwanda the first master's degree in machine intelligence and machine learning and artificial intelligence. We are working on industry leadership. So this is the faces of some of our distinguished young researchers split across the continent, across Africa. This is something that might be interesting to Future Africa, our science and research-led innovation framework. I don't want to explain this because I don't want to take too much time on it. But one thing I want to say is that it is not something that happens overnight. When we look at the technological revolution that took place, what brought the US and Germany to take the lead, it's something a process that takes 15, 20, 25, and 30 years. You can't expect to get a result over 5 years. We've set up a global platform, the Next Time Science Forum, which is the largest scientific gathering in Africa. 5 years ago, we held the first edition in Senegal, the second edition in Kigali, and we hope to hold the third edition in Rwanda. We are building a powerful community of scientists that will be calling the Future Africa home very soon. Finally, with the Future Africa, we hope to build a multidimensional partnership across multiple programs, from leveraging young scientists as role models through to cutting-edge research and discovery and technical advances. So we hope to be working on this. We've started the discussion with Professor Bernard and the Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria. And I want to say that we hope and plan to work for this to become a real epicenter that will galvanize the energy and resources from across the continent. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thierry. And may we say we are very much looking forward to the partnership between Future Africa and AIMS. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor now to invite our Honorable Minister of Department of Science and Technology, Minister Mamaloko Kubayi-Ngubane, who is going to address us from her position as Minister. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me see. Okay, I'll have to hold this up like this. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the Vice Minister, my colleague, Lorenzo Faramonti of Ministry of Education, University and Research of Italy. Acknowledge the Chancellor of University of Pretoria, Professor Wiseman Kuhlu, Professor Tawana Kupe, acknowledge the Chancellor, yes, and Professor Tawana Kupe, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, Professor Stephanie Button, Vice Principal, Research and Postgraduate Education, University of Pretoria, Professor Slippers Bernard, Founding Interim Director of Future Africa Institute, Mr. Thierry Zomahon, President and Chief Executive Officer of the African Institute for Mathematical Science, Dr. Connie Schneemere, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, I always try, co-chairperson of the Global Young Academia and Africa Science Leadership Program Fellow, Professor Howard Alper, Distinguished University Professor, University of Ottawa and Advisor to Future Africa, ambassadors present here, DG of the Department of Science and Technology together with senior leadership of DST, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me congratulate the University of Pretoria on the completion and the launch of this institute, as well as thank you for inviting me to join you today. I must appreciate and highlight the significance of this venue, particularly and the center, because it is here when we hosted our summit to discuss the science and technology white paper policy, which has been now approved by government. I also take this opportunity to congratulate Professor Tawana Kupe for his inauguration as the principal of the university. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today and sending my deepest condolences to sister peoples of Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Malawi, following the devastation of Cyclone Idai. This is one of the worst disasters to hit the South African Development Community region, SADC region, with Mozambique being the hardest hit. Together with the rest of the region, our government has been intensifying efforts to find and rescue the missing and to bring much needed aid to those in need. We must appreciate the work done by our South African Defence Force, South African Police Services, and other government agencies of the South African government who are continuously working hard to ensure that we are able to assist our neighboring countries. It is also encouraging to see South African citizens, companies, and members of the diplomatic corps making donations to the victims in the form of financial aid, clothes, water purifiers, non-perishable food items, and blankets. We must commend the people of the United Republic of Tanzania for sending 8 tons of assorted drugs in addition to 7 tons of rice they had already sent to Zimbabwe and Mozambique. We understand that Tanzania will also be donating 200 tons of maize to Malawi. Similarly, the people of Botswana are providing emergency humanitarian relief and assistance in the form of water purifying solutions and non-perishable foodstuffs and blankets. We continue to encourage all South Africans and the rest of the continent to follow this example of African solidarity. It is vitally important that as Africans, we give a practical meaning to the expression, African solutions for African problems. 69 years ago, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah stood before the United Nations General Assembly and proclaimed the dawn of a new era for Africa. He said then that, I quote, "For years, Africa has been the footstool of colonialism and imperialism, exploitation and degradation, from the north to the south, from the east to the west. Her sons languished in the chains of slavery and humiliation, and Africa's exploiters and self-appointed controllers of her destiny strode across our land with incredible inhumanity, without mercy, without shame, and without honor. Those days are gone and gone forever. And now I, an African, stand before this august assembly of the United Nations and speak with a voice of peace and freedom, proclaiming to the world the dawn of a new era," unquote. When Dr. Kwame Nkrumah made this speech, many African countries were still under the yoke of colonialism. In our case, as South Africa, our colonization had just been intensified by the imposition of apartheid 2 years before the 1948. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah understood that the people of Africa were willing to pay any price to ensure that the continent was totally liberated from the shackles of colonization. True to this understanding, Africans never rested until 1994, when South Africa completed the historic necessity of the liberation of the African continent. Our forebears laid down their lives so that we could live in an Africa whose children would be free to pursue any endeavor, regardless of its complexity, in order to construct a better Africa and a better world. Today, as Africans, we have made bold to describe the 21st century as the African century. And it is in our hands to make this assertion a practical reality. In 2015, African leaders adopted Agenda 2063 as the continent's new long-term vision for the next 50 years. Agenda 2063, rooted in a purposeful Pan-Africanism to realize Africa's renaissance, provides a robust framework for addressing past and current injustices. It recognizes that to achieve its goals, science, technology, and innovation should be harnessed as critical enabling tools. This is because, I quote from Agenda 2063, "It is within the possibility of science and technology to make even the Sahara bloom into a vast field with verdant vegetation for agricultural and industrial developments," unquote. The AU has correctly adopted the Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa, STISA 2024, which places science, technology and innovation at the epicenter of Africa's socio-economic development and growth. To, firstly, realize the eradication of hunger and achieving food security, develop new and to support existing measures for the prevention and control of diseases, promote communication. This is in physical and intellectual mobility. Protect our space, promote living together and building cohesive society. And lastly, expedite wealth creation. We can all agree that these 6 priorities broadly cover all the challenges that the African continent needs to address on an urgent basis. The expectation is that the implementation of STISA 2024 will take place at 3 levels. At national level, member states are expected to incorporate this strategy into their national development plans. At regional level, regional economic communities, regional research institutions, networks and partners are expected to leverage the strategy in designing and coordinating initiatives. The African continent has been an object of 3 industrial revolutions because we failed to husband the scientific breakthroughs for our own purposes. This is because colonialization had confined and fragmented human capacity at every level on the continent. Thus, it has become very common amongst the skeptics to ask us the question, how is it that Africa claims this century as the African century if it still lacks in the basic necessities of the first, second, and third industrial revolutions? We say to the skeptics, history is not linear, and the Africa of today has developed and continues to develop the capacity to weave the lessons of our past with broader capabilities emanating from the modern world so that we can fast-track our development. Gathered here today, ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that we are on the verge of another industrial revolution, the 4th industrial revolution. Thus it stands to reason that for us as Africans to make the 21st century as African century, we have no choice but to actively participate in the 4th industrial revolution. We therefore need to answer the question, what is it that we are doing practically to ensure that as Africans, we become active participants in this 4th industrial revolution? The launch of the Future Africa Institute we have come to witness is a timely response for the urgent need for us as Africans to place science, technology, and innovation at the center of our development. It is my belief that science, technology, and innovation can also help us break the narrow nationalist walls that are sadly starting to take root, especially in the mental spaces of some of our elites on the continent, which run the risk of pitting Africans against each other. This institute must stand as a shining example of what Africans from all over the continent can achieve in resolving our challenges, working together as Africans and not as citizens of individual nation states. Thus, I was pleased to read Professor Coupe that the Future Africa Institute will develop interdisciplinary and multinational research teams who, together with societal structures beyond academia, can engage in impactful and responsible research to find innovative solutions to complex problems in Africa. Furthermore, the Institute promises to mobilize scientists in effective collaboration across natural and social sciences, humanities, economics, and technology development to find the best scientific solution to multifaceted problems. The Department of Science and Technology is in the process of establishing the African Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in partnership with the World Economic Forum. And this center will be inviting other African countries, academia, and the private sector to partner with us so that we can work together to maximize the benefits of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We'll expect this institute to join us and become an active partner in this initiative. The launch of this institute today, ladies and gentlemen, must send a strong signal that South Africa is ready to discharge its responsibilities as an active participant in the renewal of the continent. As our former president, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, put it, I quote, "The people of Africa entertain the legitimate expectation that the new South Africa, which they helped to bring into being, will not only be an expression of the African Renaissance by the manner in which it conducts its affairs, but will also be active participant with other Africans in the struggle for the victory of that Renaissance throughout our continent. Necessarily, therefore, we are engaged and will continue to be engaged in Africa's effort to guarantee peace for her children, to feed and clothe them, to educate them, to bring them up as human beings, as human as any other in the world, their dignity restored and their equal worth recognized and valued throughout our universe," unquote. It is my sincere hope that the Institute will live up to its aspiration to be an African center, bringing all Africans together to work towards finding solutions for our continent. Once again, congratulations for this milestone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, for your message. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a very long and very rich afternoon of input and ideas, and we are going to finalize it now with a short bringing together of all the thoughts in a way forward, which is going to be presented by Professor Howard Alper, who is a distinguished university professor at the University of Ottawa, but also an advisor to Future Africa. Howard, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, for that excellent presentation. And thanks to the other speakers for providing different dimensions concerning this fantastic initiative. And Vice Chancellor, your excellent introduction shows his enthusiasm, fantastic enthusiasm for this initiative. Because in the end, all of us in the room can contribute in different ways, but it's the leader of the institution that provides the tone, direction, and energy for it to succeed on an ongoing basis. So as Professor Burton, or DVC, who I'd like to comment on in terms of her contribution to Future Africa in a few minutes along the way, said, I'm to summarize this briefly today. Summarizing is easy. I can eliminate most of what I had in my notes because you've said what I wanted to say. That's reality. But there's some things I want to convey to you as I'm in a remarkable position, I must add. I was reflecting here as being the only non-African speaking to you. It's a privilege to do so. It really is. I remember Derek Hanekom, when he was Minister of Science, Tech, said, he was introducing me and he said, he's our honorary South African. That was probably the best testimonial I've ever had. So it is a historic day for the University of Pretoria, for South Africa, and for the continent as a whole. And as you heard from previous speakers, and was on the screen, the initiative is to transform the world through African research excellence. And indeed, that is very central to the points made by several of the speakers. And key to this is the Pan-African nature of the initiative. And its core transdisciplinary projects will address key priority issues impacting society from, as was mentioned, human nature and technological perspectives. The other point made several times was on contributing meaningfully to equitable and sustainable development, thus enhancing the quality of life of the entire global community. To do so, it must bring together the best researchers from across Africa and in some cases beyond. In other words, the best working with the best, without compromise. In universities, in industry, and in government labs, to work as teams in order to markedly accelerate progress in research and innovation. This magnificent campus provides the quintessential milieu in which to collaborate and to accomplish beyond what was thought possible. That's an important goal. Right? You have dreams, you have hopes, you have expectations. There is no reason, given what the premise and basic principles that were described, can't affect, and that is to achieve beyond what was possible. That's what I've always told my graduate students and postdocs, who at first didn't believe me, but then through their career have succeeded magnificently, many of them. Many women, majority of women. Furthermore, I'd like to mention one other aspect not focused on this afternoon, and that is at the other end of the campus is the forthcoming opening for the Jarrett Art Center later this year. Its presence, as well as its ambitious objectives, will enable Future Africa and the Center to conduct research together in a synergistic manner, resulting in groundbreaking transdisciplinary research. Highly talented researchers, including, for example, Escher Mizrahi, who's in the audience, will be well positioned to seize new opportunities as he and others are equally at ease in the arts and in the sciences. That is breaking down barriers at its ultimate. The way forward to achieve the objectives and fulfill the vision of Future Africa depends on everyone in this room. For example, whether you're a member of the early career research community, of postdoctoral fellows, the Global Young Academy, the NEF, Next Einstein Forum, fellows or ambassadors, we count on each and every one of you to facilitate partnerships of top-notch researchers from across Africa with those here as well as elsewhere in South Africa. I'm just going to take a moment because I think as a wonderful milestone to point out and congratulate Professor Sanushka Naidu of this university, who recently was elected as chair of the NEF Community of Scientists. Sanushka, where are you? Bravo to her. All of you, the groups I mentioned, are I'm speaking personally as a, not just a foreigner, forget about that, but as somebody who thinks that this is the most ambitious, creative initiative I have seen globally in my career. I am not exaggerating. And so we are counting on you. The GYA, the NEF, the early career, to identify the best researchers on the continent, not only in academia, as was mentioned, but in industry, in government labs, CSIRs just down the street, for example, and encouraging them to collaborate with outstanding scientists here and elsewhere in South Africa. We must move forward in an expeditious manner to carry out an inventory of leaders in research and innovation in Africa who can work together to address questions of major significance to Africa, the outcomes and impacts influencing the rate and extent of economic advancement and societal evolution to a higher quality of life. In the audience also are experienced administrators from the different sectors, bureaucrats, example given by the Honourable Minister, Phil Mewara, as the DG, and others. And your commitment then is to strengthen opportunities for transdisciplinary and other multidisciplinary research partnerships. You need to be nimble as university leaders, for example, in making appointments in an efficient manner, and as well create modern-day reward and recognition systems. There's work to do at many institutions in this regard, because that will impact the prospects for recruiting the best of the best. And it'll enhance competitiveness. That's what I'm really saying, in Africa and beyond. These best practices in leadership will serve well on the path to success for Future Africa, their partners, and their entities. I also want at this point, before I go on for the last, celebrate the phenomenal contributions of Professor Slippers. His creativity, determination, perseverance with excellence as the underpinning is the main reason we're here today. It is the reason I'm here and why I was here for over a month in January and February. Sure, he works with many of you, and you need to be congratulated as well, but leadership is the key. That's reality. So congratulations, Bernard. And I must add that what has also made a deep impression on me from the start with the previous Vice Chancellor, Cheryl de la Rey, and continuing, as I said, with the incredible enthusiasm, commitment by the current Vice Chancellor, and aided and abetted in a superb manner, because I've witnessed it, and it's heartening to see, very frankly, the remarkable work, dedication, commitment of Professor Burton. You've done a fantastic job. And the team of Burton, Slippers, Coupe, etc., assures me personally that this will succeed in a major way. It cannot fail. And our legacy is a world-leading initiative named Future Africa. Just say before closing, there are other ways, by the way, to create partnerships. Very fortunately, Canada with South Africa has established trilateral research chairs, thanks to Department of S&T and the ministers involved. And that's another path for Future Africa to secure funding in different ways. So in closing, it's important to realize the value added by this initiative. Because it will, to me, what is most important is to enhance the position of South Africa in the world, its place in the world. Right? As a nation, you've had to address major challenges, including crime, corruption, AIDS, plus far too many people living in poverty. Not easy. At the same time, South Africa is absolutely a beautiful country. Intellectually vibrant. You know, one thing I personally enjoy here is having discussions and debates with people, including some in the audience, that are enriching like almost nowhere else in the world. I appreciate that. And many of its citizens, including your, I would say especially your leaders of tomorrow in different fields of endeavor, are moving forward with confidence. I've been to more than 80 countries. Sometimes just once, sometimes 5 times a year, and in between. And in my personal view, South Africa is the most inspirational country in the world. However, too many South Africans have low self-esteem, some for good reason, but others because they undervalue their society. Recently, I learned, speaking to others and reading from others, some South Africans claim that there is no critical mass for research. I'm focusing on what we're talking about in the country. Nor will critical mass be attainable, a number have told me. If that doesn't demonstrate low self-esteem and confidence, nothing will. My country, Canada, is much larger than South Africa, landmass. appreciably smaller than South Africa population-wise, but at least as diverse. When I get on the subway in Toronto, I'm almost always a member of a minority group from a race perspective. It is fantastically diverse. It does have critical mass, Canada, in areas such as stem cell research, transportation area, aerospace, artificial intelligence. 2 days ago, the top award in the world in the digital economy and related areas is a Turing Award given to 3 people, Joshua Bengio and Jeffrey Hinton from Canada and a researcher from France. We do have critical mass. But I will tell you as an outsider, South Africa already has critical mass. It's not that it doesn't, it's not that it never will. That's in areas like forestry. I read the Human Science Research Council statement on areas of critical mass, and I endorse on population health, right? Health systems, innovation. So my personal view, the future looks bright for not only this initiative, but also for South Africa. So South African sisters and brothers, Naledi Pandor always called me brother, and I always called her sister, and I think it's very, very important, though sounding times not true, you must go forward with pride and confidence. You owe it to your family, you owe it to the nation, you owe it to future Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Howard. Ladies and gentlemen, very briefly, one comment. You may know that next week we start graduation season, and at the end of every graduation we say, we have now come to the end of the proceedings, and there's a few more sentences that one adds. So we have now come to the end of this stage, but if you will, just allow me to give you 1 or 2 small pieces of information before you go. We have a break now of half an hour, during which there are refreshments available outside the auditorium. And in half an hour's time, at 5:30, we ask you please to gather outside the auditorium, because we are going to unveil a commemorative plaque to commemorate this occasion. And we would appreciate it if you would come back from wherever you've gone in the half hour to join us for that. There are also a number of other guests who will be joining us who have not been here this afternoon. By the time we actually finish the proceedings this evening, we will be about 500 people. So that will be a very short unveiling ceremony, and after that, of course, we have the celebration dinner. But during all of this time and for the rest of the evening, the purpose of having the celebration the way we have structured it is so that you have an opportunity to explore the Future Africa campus. Please do take that opportunity. You will find when we're finished with the unveiling and you do take a look around, there are 5 different music groups. There are many different areas where food and drinks will be served, right up to the top of the campus where there is a stall where there will be draft beer, but only after the unveiling of the plaque. There is also an art exhibition, which is mostly in the Research Commons building, which is the next building just across the path. And in there you will find some very interesting features, including some work by Professor Esh Mizrahi, who is here in the audience. Please do take an opportunity to look at that. And you will see also there, the Research Commons, the nature of the venue is very open. There are some explanations of the art, and you can take an opportunity to walk up the stairs and look out at the amazing views that there are from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me just conclude by saying, from this part of the proceedings, we have had, I think, an amazing set of talks. There's much to think about and much to go forward with. And I hope that you have found it as significant as I think we have. Thank you very much for sitting here and listening to all of us, for joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much to our speakers. We will say a few more words of thanks at the unveiling in half an hour's time. So thank you very much. We'll see you outside at 5:30. Thank you.